Hello there, kind BookTube people. Hope you're doing alright. Hope your week's been good. I'm here to talk about my week in reading. It's been a pretty good week for me this week. Before I get into kind of specific books, I thought I'd just start off talking about one short story that I read that I found intriguing and quite impressive really by the time I finished it. And it wasn't a very long short story, a very short story, even for a short story. Anyway, it's in some French tales, so these are stories translated by Helen Constantine, or Constantine, and the story in question is called You Should Have Changed It Doll, and it's by Saumont, and it's the short story is a form that I've struggled with. It's kind of failed to impress me a lot of the time, which I think is mainly down to the fact that I don't read as many short story collections as I should, or at least short stories. I don't read as many short stories as I think I should, and so it's kind of like a vicious circle. I don't read as many short stories as I should, and so I end up reading the odd short story that doesn't impress me, and because it doesn't impress me I then don't read as many. And obviously the solution is just to cast my net in different places and see what I find, and widen my reading within the form. So I'm hoping this book will give me a taste, at least for the French short story, and hopefully it'll help me fall in love with the form. The story itself is it's a very short story, kind of a blink and you'll miss it story, only like 7 pages long, and the typeface isn't that small either. So I don't know how many words it is, but not long at all. And a very kind of anecdotal story, and it's just about. Well, it begins with a train journey, a student on the train, and she drops a book and misses a station, and the guard on the train tells her, oh, you should have changed it, doll, and she's going on to the next town to get off, and it's just got this slightly surreal edge, and I quite like the way the author does this. Because on one, you could look at it as being a kind of ghost story, because as she's sort of between the two stations, she thought she was in an empty carriage, and then suddenly there are these people, and I think they're sort of described as being kind of cold, and their clothes look old-fashioned. Yeah, they kind of have 1940s kind of style clothes, and but she has this weird feeling. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's something that's troubling her, making her feel anxious, and she pulls the emergency cord on the train that makes the train stop, the guard comes running in to see what's happened, and she's alone in the carriage again, and you can't see any good reason why she's pulled this cord, and so then there's like a fine or something if you pull the cord for no good reason, and she goes to court about it, and instead of having to pay the fine, she asks to do community service, and the community service is in the town that she was sort of going towards, the town one stop after where she was originally going to on the train, and she's supposed to be in this kind of soup kitchen. And she had the impression that in that area they didn't really do soup kitchens anymore, that the last time they'd done them was like in the Second World War, and it's kind of set around the turn of the 20th century, around 2000, 2001. And then she can't find the establishment that she's supposed to be volunteering at for her community service. And is just totally confused, and when she tries to get in contact with the judge about it, it seems like the judge has disappeared, and it's just like quite a subtle, matter of fact, sort of very anecdotal kind of writing style, and all this strange stuff is going on. And it seems like she's kind of caught between the present and the past, and that the two are kind of fading in and out of her, and she can't really tell who is from when. And I think sort of part of this is to do with this town. So the story is set in Brittany, and the town itself is called Saint Malo, which is on the coast. And it was really badly bombed during the Second World War, and something they did was they rebuilt the whole town afterwards from the granites that had been blown to pieces from the old buildings. So they built new buildings out of the old buildings, which I think is interesting. And so it's kind of, it's new, it's the future, totally rebuilt buildings, but built out, it's literally built out of the past. And so this idea of sort of timelessness and falling between both, I thought was interesting. And we're also told the detail that the narrator is taking some kind of tranquilizer, you know, probably for anxiety or something like that. And so you kind of have this doubt as to, you know, whether it's some kind of strange supernatural ghost story, and whether the past is really, you know, sort of coming into her life and interfering with her life, or whether it's kind of in her head, and it's to do with the architecture and the landscape around it, where the past kind of feels so present, but at the same time has been sort of built over or rebuilt. So yeah, I thought it was an interesting short story. It grabbed my attention. Its anecdotal nature kind of made me feel like more could have been done with it. It could have been maybe pushed a bit further. Maybe a little more could have happened. But yeah, it was definitely an interesting story, and I mean, it was telling me about a part of the world I knew very little about. So yeah, it was a fascinating short story. So yeah, I'll see how the rest of these go, because it's French writers from, you know, all sorts of times. So yeah, I'm excited to dip in and out of this in the future. In terms of other reading during the week, I'm still kind of slogging on with Red Comet. Let's see, where am I? I'm about 100 pages in. So I'm kind of in Sylvia Plath's teenage years, and I'm just getting to that point that I think for a lot of other people on BookTube, when talking about this book, the kind of the one element of this book that slightly sort of ruined it, but not totally, because it is a really good book. It is just the constantly kind of going back to her dating life, and like boyfriends or possible boyfriends and things like that, you know, and it seems like it's going in a really good place, and it goes back, so that's kind of starting to happen a bit, so it's becoming a bit more of a slog sometimes, you know, it's kind of losing its rhythm, but it's still fascinating, and it's great to see how she's growing as a writer as well, because it has extracts from poems that she wrote as a kid, and then as she enters her teens, she's getting more and more published in local publications, and yeah, it's fascinating to see just the writing develop, and seeing themes that she's going to be picking up on for, you know, the rest of her life, and just seeing how they're beginning to grow is really interesting, and yeah, quite a joy to read. So yeah, that's really all I can kind of report on this book so far. Yeah, I'm trying to read it really slowly over the summer. But yeah, I'm enjoying this so far. Probably the next thing on the agenda to talk about is the hashtag Reading Europe 2021 challenge. This is with the Euros football stuff, and and it's Mark over at Book Time with Elvis. It's kind of his project, his event. But essentially, we're all allocated a country, and we read something from the country we're allocated from, and then how they do, how the country does in the football kind of. You know, it'll choose whether we need to read anything else or not. I'll link Mark's sort of explanatory video underneath, because he'll probably explain it better than I do. And so I was trying to look for some books either from or about Austria in some way, and I bought a couple, and I talked about them last week, but they hadn't arrived yet. And the first one is Hare's Above the Ground by Mary Stewart. And I think in its day it was quite a popular, fairly successful sort of thriller novel, I'm guessing. I just read the first 20 pages or so, maybe 30 pages, just to see if I was getting a feel for it, if I was enjoying it. And I just kind of felt that I wasn't really getting on very well with the writing style. Probably if I spent more time with it, I'd be alright with it. But I also kind of got the feeling I wasn't really going to get a good idea, a good feeling for Austria, because I want to kind of learn something as I'm doing this challenge, and I felt like I could get more, you know, to spend my time better and learn more. So I've left this for now, and I'll probably read it some other time. But for the challenge instead, I'm reading the other book I ordered, which is The Hare with Amber Eyes by Edmund de Waal. Yeah, this is great. I'm 120 pages through, and so essentially it's about it's telling the story of kind of a family heirloom, I guess. It's a collection of, how many is it? 264 wood and ivory netsuke. I think netsuke is how you say it. Sort of these little tiny Japanese carved ornaments, I guess, and it would take like years for them to be made. And essentially, he's tracing his family history by following. He kind of starts with his like ancestor or whoever who bought it, and as it's passed down through the family, he's following them, which is quite interesting because at least with the guy who originally bought them, a guy called Charles Efrasi, I want to say, and he gifts them to his brother or his cousin or someone, and that's 5 years before he dies. And it's quite interesting because up until that point we've kind of followed his entire life, and Edmund de Waal, as he's researching Charles's life, really feels like he's getting to know him, and there are points where he actually kind of describes it like he's walking alongside him, and it's really like beautifully written. It kind of weaves in and out of the present and the past in a really wonderful way, and there are kind of four kind of centres of attention as he's going through it. There's the life of whoever he's talking about. There is kind of him with himself, the writer with the netsuke, and trying to find out more about them. There is him sort of in archives and libraries, trying to find out more about them. And then there's him travelling to the places where they lived, and where they travelled to, and walking the streets they walked down and things like that. And these kind of four things just weave really seamlessly into each other in a really, really lovely way. You know, and it gives you that impression that he's walking alongside them at points. But yeah, this family, I think it's the Efrasi family. They were quite a rich family in the mid 19th century in Europe, and they were I suppose they started out as grain merchants in Odessa, and then they sort of branched out. They built a big family house in Vienna and another big family house in Paris, and essentially different branches of the family are based in the different cities, and if someone wants to move to the other city, then they can just have an apartment in the family palace, basically. And so most of what I've read so far has actually been based in Paris, but it's just moving to Vienna now, and describing the architecture and some of the history of the city. And yeah, I'm glad I went with this book for this challenge, just because yeah, it's just really beautifully describing the city itself, and like they literally lived almost over the road from Freud's apartment in Vienna, and there are so many other kind of famous people like in Paris. So Charles, one of the family back in the day, was friends with like impressionist painters like Renoir and Manet, and he knew Proust. Like Proust would just come round to his house and look at his paintings and stuff like that. So it's just crazy seeing the lives that this guy's family sort of weaved in and out of. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. Probably talked too long about it, but there we go. That's the Hare with Amber Eyes, and then finally it's the Iliad by Homer. So Matthew over at Maybe Book Club and Steve Donahue are doing a read along, and I am following along in the shadows, as I'm sure quite a few of the people who watch their channels are. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's kind of spread out over June, so it basically works out at 6 books. Yeah, 6 books a week, which is really manageable. And the book I've just read, I think it's book 10. Who is it? Odysseus and Diomedes. Odysseus and Diomedes have just kind of done a little sort of stealth raid in the night into the Trojans' camp, and have like killed a few people and stolen some horses and things, and caught a spy trying to do the same thing. And it's definitely more interesting than I thought it was going to be going into it. I suppose the one thing that stopped me from reading the Iliad before this was that it's not the shortest book in the world. It's coming up to about 600 pages or so. I just wasn't really sure whether I wanted to read that much just about fighting, about war and battles and things. But there are the high kind of climactic battle scenes, and then the moments of rest and reflection, and there's all the stuff with the gods arguing and bickering. That there's a lot of range in it, and yeah, I'm beginning to feel quite attached to quite a lot of the characters. I have a bit of an affinity with Hector, the Trojan. He seems to be like one of the few sensible characters in the whole thing most of the time. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the Iliad, and yeah, coming up to halfway now, which is crazy. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it, and I think that's it really. So I guess I'm reading quite a few things, kind of taking my time, jumping from one thing to another. But yeah, that's been my reading this week. I'll probably get back to you at some other point this weekend, or at some point next week. Hopefully some point next week. I want to try and upload a video that's been sort of waiting. I've been waiting to put it up. It is quite long, but a while ago my sister came over, and we did the Penguin book quiz, and we filmed ourselves doing it, and we thought, yeah, I'd put it up on my channel and so people can kind of play along. So yeah, if you'd be interested in watching that, then I guess keep your eyes peeled. I'll try and upload it yeah, at some point But otherwise, that's everything for now. Yeah, just take care and happy reading, and I'll see you all soon. Alright, bye bye.